You're reading this on a device that connects to billions of other devices. Right now, instantly. You didn't ask permission. You didn't dial a special number. You didn't fill out a form or wait for approval from anyone. You just connected. But this almost didn't happen. Not in the way you think. Not the close call version where the technology barely worked. This was a political, commercial, and ideological war over what the internet should be. And for decades, the version you use today was losing. In 1964, a researcher named Paul Baran at the Rand Corporation was terrified. The Cold War was at its peak. Nuclear war felt less like a hypothetical and more like a scheduling problem. And Baran had a question no one in the military wanted to answer. If a nuclear bomb destroyed a major American city, could the communication network survive? The answer was no. The phone system at the time was built like a tree. A central trunk with branches. Cut the trunk and everything above it dies. AT&T's entire network was designed around central switching stations. Massive buildings packed with mechanical switches that routed every single call across the country. Destroy one of those buildings and an entire region goes dark, completely silent. This wasn't a theoretical weakness. It was an architectural fact. The system was designed for efficiency, not survival. Baran thought this was dangerous, so he proposed something radical. Instead of one central network, build a web, not a tree. A web. Thousands of small nodes all connected to each other. If one node disappears, the message finds another path. Like water flowing around a rock in a stream. No single point of failure, no central authority, just a mesh of connections. He called it distributed communications. He wrote a 12-volume report for the United States military titled On Distributed Communications. The Pentagon read every page. They were intrigued. They wanted to build it. AT&T did not. AT&T's engineers told the Defense Department that the technology Baran was describing, packet switching, a technique where data gets chopped into small pieces and routed independently across different paths, was technically impossible. They said it would never work for voice calls. They said the existing centralized system was more reliable, more proven, more efficient. They were wrong about the technology, but they were also the most powerful communications company on Earth, and they had decades of infrastructure invested in the centralized model, billions of dollars of switching equipment, thousands of employees trained to maintain it. If the internet had been built AT&T's way, you would be paying per message, every email, every web page, every search, metered, billed, controlled from the center. That was their vision, a managed network, a profitable network, a network they owned. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic Ocean, a British physicist named Donald Davies at the National Physical Laboratory was having the exact same idea, completely independently. He had never read Baran's classified report. He arrived at the same conclusion through his own research at his lab in London. Davies built a small test network to prove his concept worked. He called the technique packet switching. He actually coined that term. The British government expressed genuine interest. They saw the potential, but they moved slowly. Funding got tangled in bureaucratic committees. The project stalled. It never scaled beyond Davies' laboratory. History might have been different if the British had moved faster. The Americans did move. In 1969, the Advanced Research Projects Agency, ARPA, a division of the U.S. Department of Defense, connected 4 university computers into a single network. The nodes were at UCLA, Stanford, UC Santa Barbara, and the University of Utah. They called it ARPANET. It was tiny. Ugly, barely functional. The first message ever sent across the network crashed after just 2 letters. A programmer at UCLA named Charlie Klein was trying to type the word login. The system transmitted the letter L, then the letter O, then it crashed. The network could not handle 5 letters in sequence. But the concept worked. Eventually, the full word got through. Packet switching functioned. The distributed model held. Baran's Cold War nightmare scenario had accidentally produced something nobody expected, a network that could not be killed. The problem was that nobody could agree on how to expand it. Every network spoke its own language. ARPANET used one protocol. The military radio network used another. The satellite network used a third. Connecting them was like trying to have a conversation where every sentence arrives in a different language. Data got lost. Formats clashed. Nothing fit together. In 1974, two American researchers named Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn published a paper that changed everything. The paper was called A Protocol for Packet Network Intercommunication. In it, they described a universal protocol, a common language that any network could use to speak to any other network, regardless of the hardware underneath. They called it TCP/IP, Transmission Control Protocol and Internet Protocol. Think of it as a universal translator for machines. No matter what equipment you had, what network you were on, or where you were in the world, TCP/IP gave your data a shared format. A common envelope with a standard address. You did not need to know what was inside the network. You just needed to speak the language. This was the fork in the road, the moment that would determine everything. Because while Cerf and Kahn were designing an open protocol that anyone could use for free, governments and corporations around the world were building their own closed systems. And some of those closed systems were brilliant. France launched Minitel in 1982. It was a national videotext network. The French government distributed free terminals to millions of households across the country. Citizens could check the weather, read the news, book train tickets, send messages to each other, shop online, do their banking. By the early 1990s, over 6 million Minitel terminals were installed in French homes. It was years ahead of anything else in the world. It felt like the future. Britain had Prestel, Japan had a system called Captain, Canada built Teledyne. Each one was a centralized, government-backed network with curated content and controlled access. Each one worked beautifully within its own borders. In the United States, private companies built their own walled gardens. CompuServe launched in 1969, the same year as ARPANET. Prodigy followed in 1984, backed by IBM and Sears. America Online AOL launched in 1991 and grew explosively. These were closed networks. You could message other members, you could read their content, you could browse their forums and play their games, but you could not leave. You could not connect to anything outside the wall. Everything was curated, everything was controlled, everything was monetized. If any of these models had become the global standard, the internet as you know it would not exist. You would be inside someone's system, using their rules, paying their rates, seeing only what they decided you should see. But TCP/IP had one advantage that none of those systems had. It was free, open, completely unpatented. Anyone could adopt it. You did not need a license from the government. You did not need permission from AT&T or France Telecom or AOL. You did not need to pay royalties to Cerf and Kahn. You just had to implement the protocol and connect. In 1986, the National Science Foundation built a backbone network called NSFNET using TCP/IP. It connected supercomputing centers and major universities across the United States. The speed was modest, just 56 kilobits per second at first. That is slower than almost anything you have ever used. But universities plugged in, research laboratories plugged in, libraries plugged in. Slowly, organically, without any central plan, the open network grew. By 1990, ARPANET was officially decommissioned. Its work was done. NSFNET had become the backbone of what we now call the Internet. And then in 1989, a British computer scientist working at CERN, the European Physics Laboratory in Geneva, proposed something that would unlock the Internet for ordinary people. His name was Tim Berners-Lee. He called his invention the World Wide Web. The idea was deceptively simple. Documents would be linked together using hypertext, clickable connections between pages. A browser would let you navigate between them. An addressing system called URLs would let you find anything. A protocol called HTTP would deliver the pages to your screen, and a formatting language called HTML would make them readable. Berners-Lee could have patented the entire system. Every piece of it was his invention. He could have licensed it to governments and corporations. He could have become one of the wealthiest people in human history. He gave it away, completely free. Open, no royalties, no gatekeepers, no licensing fees of any kind. He posted the code online and told the world to use it. This is the moment most people miss when they tell the story of the Internet. The Internet did not become the Internet because of one invention or one breakthrough technology. It became the Internet because of a philosophy: openness, decentralization, the belief that no single company or government should own the network that connects humanity. AT&T wanted control. AOL wanted control. The French government had control. And one by one they all lost, not because their technology was worse. In many cases, their systems were more polished, more user-friendly, more immediately functional. They lost because the open model attracted more builders, more experimenters, more creators, more beautiful, productive chaos. And that chaos became the World Wide Web. By 1995, NSFNET was privatized. The Internet was officially open to commercial traffic. AOL began offering unlimited monthly access for a flat fee, and millions of Americans flooded onto the open web. The walled gardens could not compete with a network that had no walls at all. Minitel persisted in France until 2012, a beloved relic of a path not taken. CompuServe was absorbed into AOL. Prodigy faded into nothing. The Internet won, not because it was the most elegant design, because it was the most free. You carry this entire history in your pocket. A device connected to an open protocol designed by two researchers in the 1970s. Running on a distributed network architecture modeled by a Cold War theorist in 1964. Made accessible to ordinary people by a British scientist at a Swiss physics laboratory who refused to patent his own invention. 3 moments, 3 decisions. 3 people who chose openness over control. Any one of them goes differently, and you are not reading this right now. You are inside a walled garden, paying per click, seeing only what someone else decided you should see. The next time you open your browser, remember, this version of the Internet was not inevitable. It was not the obvious path. It was not the most profitable model. It was a choice. A series of choices, made by people who believed the network should belong to everyone. And it almost did not happen.